Okay, I have a couple of different thoughts I'm trying to juggle. Aries Mercury energy that I'm now obviously already feeling. Not very good at multitasking, so I'm just gonna try this madness method and just randomly spout off certain clips about whatever things that I'm currently trying to articulate and build on them, and hopefully I can at least get my point across to somebody. So this is a personal vlog kind of thing, just an account of some things going on. So if I'm not gonna say all that, if you're on the same page with me and you've been keeping up with me personally as well as some of my educational or transit videos, I obviously have a psychic signature with the Galactic Center. I have my series Chiron, Saturn, Uranus, the Moon, essentially from a solar perspective, on the actual MC and IC line, directly from source. So, translated layman's terms means there's a big black hole that was right above, right aligned with my MC at the moment of my birth, and I'm getting messages down the pike, like some sort of mail tube or something. But anyway, so I've been experiencing, obviously, a lot of disturbances. Psychological disturbances is what I would have originally called it quite a few years ago. That was more or less before I started experiencing and coping with a Neptune transit. So my perspective of how I would have interpreted that just even 2 or 3 years ago as opposed to the person now would be entirely different. The person I was 2 or 3 years ago wrote down, and I actually have the paper somewhere, I'm not even going to bother trying to look for them right now, but I remember this specifically because I've been really apprehensive about it. I determined from my own astrological interpretations from the aspects in my progression chart that I was going to start experiencing schizophrenic episodes, or schizophrenia, or some sort of psychosis or neurosis things. Dissociative personality disorder, more or less. And I obviously do have some like mania, anxiety induced or associated conditions, as well as antisocial personality disorder. So one thing that I've always prided myself on is my Scorpio Mercury conjunct Pluto opposition my Jupiter and Aries does gift me with a very HD kind of candid camera, or actual security kind of camera for my perception and how I pick up things. I pick up a lot. And as I've been experiencing this Neptune transit, that discernment has been getting a lot worse. Not that I'm like seeing things, but that I think that I'm picking up things, or I'm just not processing things, which is totally plausible. The fact that I have Pluto going over my 8th house where my Neptune is can explain some things. It's definitely fucking with me. So that being said, from a young age, I have a lot of abnormal kind of conditions. Your descendant line is supposed to represent, and planets or the house ruler are supposed to represent the kind of physiological symptoms that you would manifest if you have some sort of abnormalities or weaknesses within the ascendant's vitality. Meaning when you get sick, or when a person, starts, their immune system is not that great, they start to manifest characterized symptoms that are typical for them most of the time throughout their life. So me having Uranus on that, that translates automatically to abnormal symptoms. Meaning that a lot of the conditions that I end up developing, and or when I show some sort of, signs of illness, symptoms in general, the very rare, even sometimes not documented, symptoms that would arise are going to always be the things that I experience. So when looking on like WebMD and stuff like that to like get a general idea of what I have, not only is that a hypochondriac, anxiety-prone nightmare for me, because it'll pretty much tell me I have cancer. I mean, I'm sure it does that for other people too, but it'll never be right. And in fact, I've actually used medical astrology to be able to find like the basic origin of certain conditions, not only with myself, but with my ex as well, and some friends of mine. And people would probably ask, how the hell do I do that? And actually, while I'm on this train of thought, assuming that this thing didn't just freeze, okay, good. If you think back to the body parts and the archetype anatomy, how each sign and planets are associated with like certain systems, like like the nervous system, the lymphatic system, that sort of thing, and then certain signs are actually attributed to physical body parts. So if you have a pain right here, and it's it kind of, the symptoms are exacerbated when you start to get angry, that would insinuate that it's nervous system related, right? So then you would look at the planets or the signs that are associated with the nervous system. So that would be Virgo, Gemini, and then the polarities obviously would be Pisces, Sagittarius, and then also if it's the nervous system or like blood pressure, you would obviously attribute Mars as well as Pluto, Scorpio involved in this with the ancient rulers. So you look at those kinds of things. You can also look at the actual moment when you're starting to feel symptoms and be able to diagnose what the triggering or the origin of the symptom is. And that's actually how I've been able to determine, at least give the doctors an idea of where to look. And yes, I've actually had to tell some doctors, specifically like with my ex, that he had gastroparesis, and it wasn't because he was having DKA episodes and having issues with his insulin and his blood sugar, but that his freaking stomach didn't work. Because I looked at that in the charts, and essentially there was some sort of nasty aspect with Saturn, specifically to his stomach, that was triggering his stomach to stop. And that's exactly what happened. They ended up putting a scope down his throat, determining that the muscle contractions, the nerve that's in your stomach, that sends the signal to start contracting your stomach to break down food so you can just then process it. That nerve was damaged from all of his DKA episodes that he was having. And because that nerve was damaged, he was actually having food just sitting there in his stomach rotting. And they wouldn't have found it and even gone to that length if it wasn't for the fact that I got in their face and scared the hell out of them and made them do it. Yeah. So, that in itself, I've obviously tried to solve my own personal symptoms that have been, that my doctors or medical professionals have failed to be able to tell me what it's from. One thing that I've never been able to figure out, and granted, I haven't actually, seen like a neurologist specialist or anything like that, but I get this, like back here, it would be like right where my brain, like the stem of my brain, connects like to the lower part of my neck into my head right there. Right back there, it's like a combination between, if you were to shake up a soda, like a canned soda, and then open it and you just shh, and white noise. And then what's weird is that I actually hear it. Oh, it's like a combination of shh, pop rocks in your mouth, like pop, 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 and white noise, static white noise. And it doesn't, I've actually documented it, doesn't happen at any particular times, and I don't even have a thorough record, I guess, of when it has happened, because it's not like a frequent thing. I can't even say that it's a frequent or infrequent thing, because it's actually unpredictable, which makes me assume that it's Uranus related. But before I get ahead of myself here, so I've still never been able to figure out what that is. Some of the medical, like preconditions that I might be concerned about would be like aneurysms and stuff. I obviously have a very overactive nervous system, that's why I'm really manic. And funny enough as well, I have really horrible luck with electronic items. So, electronics would be attributed to Mercury, obviously. We obviously understand that when there's Mercury retrograde, it fucks with your signals and your electronics and your power. So those houses are in particular associated with the 3rd and 6th house. In those houses, I have Lilith in the 3rd house, which would, it could translate to her, basically, manipulating electronic items. That's totally plausible. Could also be the galactic center alignment right there, which I think is actually more or less the lines that I'm going on. And, then in the 6th house, I obviously have my Plutonian signature with Pluto and Mercury, opposition with Jupiter in the 12th house. So, the Plutonian signature in itself in the 6th house of Virgo could actually cause that. The fact that the house ruler of the 9th house, which is the polarity obviously of the 3rd house, which would have some sort of effects with electronic signals, is ruled by Aquarius, which is, again, something that is abnormally charged and erratic and attributed to the nervous system. So, regardless of what I want to blame, I always have issues with electronics, and I've noticed in the last couple years that actually when I start to get worked up, meaning that like when I have Saturn right in front of my moon, so it kind of holds back the intensity that I feel. So even when I look really manic, I'm actually way worse on the inside. And the fact that I've actually recorded myself before when I've been really worked up, because I have private vlogs also I keep on my computer, and then I go to rewatch them. Sometimes when I'd be freaking out, I almost literally feel like I'm about to have a heart attack, and like I could take my pulse and it's out of control. It's nuts. I look back and watch it, and I'm nowhere even close to how I felt on the inside with the way I look on the outside, and that's the Saturn mask. But because I have that over-electric charge with Aries Jupiter in my 12th house, in opposition with a Scorpio Mercury, and then being conjunct Pluto, and then obviously, also, yeah, Uranus squaring Mars. So my Mars is in Virgo, which is, associated with Mercury and nervous system, and Uranus, again, is associated with nervous system and neurological connections or whatever, and them being both immutable would mean that it's erratic, right? The way that manifests. And, yeah, so essentially, when I get worked up, and I'm not saying angry, but like just when my nervous system is overly charged, that fucks up with not only battery lives in cell phones, as well as anything else that has batteries, but I'll also freeze up like my computer, even the signals and stuff, and even, I'm not even joking, my ex actually didn't let me, it's not like I was heartbroken about it, but he made sure that I never actually came into physical contact with his laptop, because he was convinced that if I touched it, I would ruin it. And even in fact, when I have some electronics that malfunction, like for example, I haven't touched this in a while, I'll probably try it out soon. I have random dead electronics everywhere. One of my exes used to make fun of me and ask me why I keep them all around. And I said, because it's actually not broken. It's like, well, why don't you use it? And I'm like, because it just went off one day. And even sometimes when I'm in the midst of using it and I get angry or something, it will just shut off and it's done. It'll shut off and it's done. And I used to break things like that, or I even used to, actually smash it on the ground, then try to turn it on, and it would turn back on, which is very weird because that's obviously not supposed to be a thing. I don't recommend that. And then after I noticed the first time when I was getting really angry and I didn't want to break something because it was expensive, I put it down and put it in a drawer, and I didn't even charge it again or anything like that before I tried to use it. I forgot about it, went back through my drawers a month later, saw it there and said, oh yeah, I wonder if this works. And I just go to pick it up, and all of a sudden, it acts like it was out of sleep mode. It was a tablet, and it turns on. And it was a particular tablet I got from a friend that's actually very technologically inclined, and I told him that it was having issues, because he asked about it. And I took it to him, and he went back through like all the systems and everything, make sure it didn't have any bugs in it, or any kind of things like that. And he said that everything's good, and then he even reset it to factory reset, which I have to do frequently with a lot of my electronics. And he said that it was fine, and it worked all fine for him, and, his wife was using it a little bit, and then I was using it just for a brief moment, and I said, yeah, it seems to be fine, because he's just watching me use it, The second that I went home and took it in the house, didn't drop it or, expose it to any kind of weird environment or anything, it started to malfunction immediately. Actually started having seizures. I actually have a video somewhere on, I don't know if it's on Facebook or if it's on YouTube, of like my tablet having seizures. That happens a lot. Not just with the tablet, but other things as well. In fact, I have a smart car. It's a Ford Focus that has like the sync, navigation thing in it. My car will randomly get lost in the midst of giving directions. And then even so, there was one time when I was driving over to Seattle with some friends in the car, so there was obviously witnesses, and I was trying to get the navigation to work, and it was working just fine. It ended up taking us the complete wrong way in Seattle, and then on top of that, it started to glitch, as it was saying that it didn't have navigation programmed into the computer, and then it was essentially if you talk when the thing is asking you to say something specific, or if it's trying to listen to you, or if there's any kind of noise at all, it completely fucks it up and makes you either redo it or it stops doing what it's doing and it tells you to repeat yourself. The car itself was having like a dissociative personality thing. It was interrupting itself, trying to ask me for, input to put into the navigation so we could have an actual trip route or whatever. But then it kept glitching and interrupting itself simultaneously with the same voice modulator, trying to give me directions for the navigation that supposedly isn't programmed into it. Yeah. There's definitely some YouTube videos about some of my issues with my car. So this is a very, very lengthy discussion with this. I have yet to ever figure out what that fizzing or white noise thing is in the back of my head. I felt for a couple years I didn't have any phenomenon like that. In recent times, within this last month at least, when I've been really feeling a bunch of intense stuff. And when I say last month, it could be within the last 3 or 4 weeks, so it would have been right before the eclipse, or right after the lunar eclipse in Leo. I'm starting to not only be able to discern what the psychic channeling thing is when I'm feeling it, and kind of document it so I'm aware of it. But I actually had a huge, it wasn't even one, because it's not like it has a certain length of how long it fizzes or whatever, or makes that static noise. Sometimes it'll just like you're leaving like a faucet on barely or something like that. But it did it off and on long enough for me to grab my phone out, because it's never happened consistently that long enough with me having some sort of device within reach to potentially record it. So I didn't actually think that I was going to hear it per se, but I'm trying to, figure out what the fuck it is. And by eliminating other possibilities, I can get closer to figuring out what the fuck it is. So I pulled out my phone and I turned on, a recording thing, audio. And I held it to the back of my head while I felt that going on. I played it back, put it on my computer, tried to amplify the audio, concluded that there's no sound on the outside of me when that phenomenon is happening. So I feel it as well as I hear it. So I obviously hear it in my head. And I still don't understand what that is. But the fact that Uranus in Aries continues to get ever so closer to my Jupiter in Aries in my 12th house, which would essentially maybe be partially responsible for the electronics going haywire, right? I think it's 4 degrees off from actually being conjunct with my Jupiter in Aries, and I'm terrified because apparently having a Scorpio Mercury is intense enough. Having it conjunct with Pluto makes it worse, or more intense. And then obviously we understanding what Jupiter is, being a benefic or magnifying things or over-exaggerating it, when Jupiter is opposition with that, it makes it worse. So I am the most exaggerated example of Scorpio Mercury that I could probably ever find, that people will probably be able to at least observe from documented footage and stuff like that specifically too, because Scorpio and Mercury people usually don't like to put themselves out there. My Aquarian MC definitely makes me abnormal. So, what I was actually trying to say is when I went to my Aries friend's house, I went to her house earlier, and I occasionally will go up there. That one particular night when I started talking about like the Final Destination video, where I started having anxiety about thinking that there's going to be accidents or something, and there ended up being an actual death signature that was about to go over the ascendant in my local area within an hour or so after that. That night in particular, apparently after I had left, she has a, it's not a very old house, and she just lives there and she's got kids. There's not a lot of people. So she's never really had any electrical issues before. And she's well aware of like my issues with like batteries dying and everything, and I even got a new tablet for Christmas, and I looked at it and I was like, no. I gave it to my boyfriend just instantly as soon as I took it out of the box. I'm like, you might as well just have it because this thing's not going to last very long. I apparently went to leave. She told me specifically that was the night that like my phone died, so I decided I was going to go home. Because we watch like YouTube videos and stuff on my phone. I go to leave, and she says not even, she was watching me out the door and pulling out in my car. And when she turned around to come in the house and shut the door, all of her lights were out in her house. Every single one. The breaker had flipped. Although there's not anything really on. And she says that that's never happened before. So that, there was another instance, I think the time before that, which I think would have been a week or so before. She said that the same thing happened again, about 10 minutes after I left. And she said that I was kind of, manic or erratic, and that is, a factor with me, like killing battery life and stuff. That her lights again went out, but not just on, not in the whole house, but just on the first floor. And both her kids were asleep, and nobody else was there, so nothing was being used. And again, she's never had these issues before. She, also being an Aries, and having an Aries Mercury, I believe, and she has an Aries Moon, and, she's pretty active, and she's all over the place chasing kids. She doesn't always remember to mention things. So the fact that she actually recalled this, when I was talking about the fizzing thing in particular, and my manic kind of mannerisms, because of not only Uranus getting closer to my natal Jupiter, but also the fact that now we're in Aries season, or we're almost in Aries season. To me, it's Aries season, because I'm starting to feel the Mercury in Aries. And that's going to also be conjunct with Uranus, Eris. And then it's going to go over my Jupiter, too, obviously. So I'm going to get really super, manic, like charged, electrically charged, like Jupiter's atmosphere, charged. It's going to be intense. The fact that, those things will only happen when I was there. And in fact, I'm actually anticipating her to, like, text me and let me know if her power went out or not again. Because in particular, as I start to feel this kind of channeling thing more and more, I'm noticing not only it having physiological effects when this is happening on my actual expressions, body language, and just the way that I talk, and even in the way that I articulate myself, it's evident. I obviously observe myself quite often, and I'm very aware of, the modes of behavior of psychology. And, yeah. I don't know. It has to be Uranian influenced. I guess I'm kind of brainstorming while I'm thinking about this. Well, if technically that galactic center thing has my Uranus right in the middle as well, that would explain. Yeah. Because Uranus can be taken as a psychic signature also. Like a intuitive flash kind of thing. Flash is right. So I'm assuming that I have no idea why the fuck that sound would happen, or why that would happen. I was born in Virginia City, Nevada, which is a very paranormal active town. I was very aware that there were paranormal entities around, and I can also feel those things, and in fact I have plenty of, not videos, but I have plenty of photos, just when I randomly am traveling and stuff. I love cemeteries. Plutonian, I like that kind of thing. Where I don't even catch orbs or shapes in my photos. One of them in particular, I was in Winnemucca, Nevada. It was a cemetery across the street from a Motel 6. I actually remember that because it was very awful. I was holding my really expensive DSLR camera, and I was just taking some pictures of headstones and stuff. And for whatever reason, all I was doing was stepping forward, and I can walk. I know how to walk. Okay, I've also hurt myself many times with Uranus squaring Mars, and I know when I did it or if it's something else. I have no idea. I assumed that I had tripped or it was me, but I just went to go take just one little step forward so I can take this photo. It's not like I was stepping down or anything like that. And I went, not just falling, because if I would have just slipped my foot or something, I would have fell close within proximity of where I was. I actually was leaped forward, and I skidded forward on my elbows. And I was at least a good 3 to 4, if not 5 feet away from where I was actually standing when I hit the ground. I decided, fuck this shit. I didn't even know if my camera was broken. With my luck with electronics, I decided to just call it quits and go back to the hotel across the street. I went and looked at the footage later. That exact photo that I took, the last one, before I left, has this giant freaking orb right in the face of the camera, coming right from the headstone that I was taking a picture of. Not all of my experiences are like that, but I wasn't very shocked by that event that happened. So the fact that I seem to be some sort of magnet for electromagnetic energy, i.e. having some sort of paranormal consciousness not only be interested in me, but kind of gravitate towards me. And it always makes me think of like Poltergeist, like Carol Ann kind of thing. And then what's interesting is, in recent times I've found out, kind of educated myself a bit, at least, on what Eris represents in my chart. And with it being in the 11th house in Aries, it specifically said that I'm supposed to be some sort of guide or directive force where lost souls will gravitate to me. So I would assume lost souls would translate to people being alive or dead. which could kind of explain some things. And also, so my OCD, my erratic behavior, my mania, my accident-prone stuff where I really maim myself, like when I almost lost my eye, me manipulating electronic items, as well as being basically stalked by paranormal entities, and the fizzing thing in the back of my head, and me being able to channel things, or, randomly pull things out of my ass. And trust me, my communication skills have not always been up to par. And even still, sometimes when I'm not on my mojo's not in sync, or the channeling, I guess, I still can't make much sense of anything unless I thoroughly outline out what I'm trying to talk about and then go over it. It's evident if you look at just snippets of different videos I have on my YouTube channel. All of those are directly associated with Uranus in my chart. And when Uranus in Aries in transit goes over my Jupiter, I don't even know. I'm not even going to plant ideation, but whew. All I know is that from what I gather is that the effects that I have been experiencing are going to intensify. And I hope, and I'm not doing a psychosomatic thing, goddammit. I'm not causing this. My ex was convinced that I caused these things to happen. That because I actually say them, that they end up manifesting. Which that is a theory in psychology. But the only reason why I even speculate some of these things is because I kind of get carried away when my Scorpio Mercury starts to investigate events and correlating information that happened with something that actually is going on in reality. So until I actually have tangible evidence, more or less, to that kind of trend or theme or cycle of energy, I don't just make shit like that up. So clearly, if it's already happened before, it's bound to happen again, synchronicity. And I wonder if this video is going to even sync up because it continually is freezing now. I'm going to stop.